Okay, good morning or good afternoon, geometry class. So here's the deal. So I found out yesterday after I got home that I had been exposed to someone who is subsequently tested positive for COVID. So my wife and I both went and immediately got tested with a rapid test. We're both good. However, out of an abundance of caution, we have been told to quarantine until next Thursday. So I'll be gone from now until through next Wednesday. So what that means is that you guys are going to get to learn through videos and things like that, which, understandably is not ideal. That being said, we're going to make the best of it because that's the theme for 2020 is make the best of it. And, so today, you guys have a worksheet. It is on angle relationships, specifically vertical angles, linear pairs, things like that. So this is stuff that you should have learned, but again, understanding that, it sucks that learning through Edgenuity is rough. So I want to kind of take a break and go through everything that you should have learned, and then we'll go through a couple of the sample problems on the worksheet. So, vertical angles formed by two sets of opposite rays, okay? That is the kind of textbook definition for vertical angles, and that's what we're going to be using. So what that means, remember, rays are where you have an endpoint and it goes forever in another direction. So opposite rays are where you have the same endpoint, but the rays are going in opposite directions. Now, that looks like a line, okay? But where this becomes important for vertical angles is to sit there and realize that if we put two of those together, the angle that are formed end up being congruent, okay? So vertical angles, and this sign right here, that's the angle sign with a little S next to it, and we say angles, okay? So vertical angles are congruent. This are what are called linear pairs. Why are they called linear pairs? Well, because you have one set of opposite rays, and all linear pairs are supplementary. That means they add up to 180 degrees. That is different than complementary. Complementary angles add up to 90 degrees, or some to 180 or some to 90. Okay, so there was a small glitch with the recording, so there may be some continuity issues right here. Anyway, this is a linear pair. Linear pair because it's made up of two opposite rays, which, as we just said, make up a line. So what we're going to do is we realize that if it makes up a line, that together, because the line is 180 degrees, they are supplementary. Again, stuff that you should have gone over. If you don't remember it, totally okay. Again, we are trying to bridge that gap between what we had hoped you had learned on Edgenuity and what you guys were actually capable of learning on Edgenuity. Again, that's more a comment on the difficulty of online learning and not in any way, shape, or form your guys' ability to learn. So, supplementary, sum to 180, and that is different than complementary, which is 90 degrees. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quick run through whoa, what just happened? All linear pairs are supplementary, right? So that's important. And so here we have our little x, right? And we have four angles in there. We have A, B, C, and D. And so what we're going to talk about is why vertical angles are congruent. So normally today, what the original plan was going over proofs with you and talking about how proofs work, but because we're doing this virtually and via video, that just seems silly because proofs are difficult on any given day, let alone trying to learn through YouTube. So we want to show that angle A and angle C are congruent. And that's what that, just so you guys know, that's what this sign means. If you didn't know that, congruent. It's kind of like an equal sign. The big difference is that when you're talking about shapes and angles, if you say that they're exactly the same, you use the word congruent. That means that the physical angle and the physical shape are the same. Their measures, the actual numbers associated with them, are equal. So so think about it this way. So let's say we have two people who are both 6'1", and they both weighed 275 pounds. We could say that those two people were congruent because their numbers match up. But we would say that their heights are equal or that their weights are equal. So when we're talking about actual numbers, we're talking about equality. When we're talking about the physical shape, like the manifestation, the actual shape, the actual angle, the actual sides of a triangle, we talk about congruent. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at two sets of linear pairs. We look at A and B, and we look at B and C. Both of those are linear pairs, so they have to be supplementary. So we know that the measure of A plus the measure of B has to add up to 180 degrees, and that the measure of B plus the measure of C equals 180 degrees. Okay, so we are now going to be using what is called the transitive property of equality. That is the transitive. I should probably write that down. I don't think I did last night. Transitive property of equality. And what that means is that if you have two things that equal the same thing, so we know that 4 plus 4 equals 8 and 6 plus 2 equals 8, that they have to equal each other. Woo! Hit the buttons too fast. Okay? So that is the transitive property. So look over now to the right-hand side where we have A plus B equals 1/8. That's really messy. I'm going to quick rewrite that. I apologize. Again, my handwriting, especially after 7 months of not doing this, is roughly that of a drunk monkey with a seizure disorder. So we have the measure of angle A plus the measure, I'm going to run out of room, so we're going to have to erase this too. of angle B equals 180 degrees. And then we have the measure of angle B plus the measure of angle C equals 180 degrees. So because they're both adding up to 180 degrees, it means that they have to be equal to each other. The same way that 4 plus 4 is equal to 6 plus 2, the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B equals the measure of angle B plus the measure of angle C. And that's the transitive property that we just used. So now what we're going to do, in a little bit of mathematical magic, we're going to subtract the measure of angle B from both sides. Now this is using what's called the subtraction property of equality. If we subtract the same thing from both sides, then we can keep the equal sign. So notice what happens. Because we have those B's on both sides, they cancel out. So now we're just left with the measure of angle A equals the measure of angle C, which subsequently means that the angle A is congruent to angle C. So that's how we know. So notice that we did this without any numbers whatsoever. But that gives us now we know that angle A and angle C are congruent. And since we did it without numbers, we can say conclusively that vertical angles are congruent. Okay? So, this is the go back, there we go. This is the geometry. It says geometry review. So I found out about, my exposure and everything yesterday after I got home. So it's kind of limited on my ability to create worksheets because I couldn't go in and to go to the school because, quarantine. So this is a review from chapter 2 from last year, but it goes over the same things. So let's look at number 1. So what we want to do is identify whether or not there are any vertical angles, and here there are. Right there. I like to call them my little bow tie angles because it looks like a little bow tie. And if I was there in front of you, I'd straighten my bow tie and show you how the angles on the bow tie are the same. Not 64 degrees, but now I'm just rambling, so I'll stop. Anyway, we have B equals 64. So that means because Okay, after further technical difficulties, aka my daughter closed my computer, we're back at it. So let's look at number 2. Number 2, what we have to understand here. So first, what we want to do is in any of these, and this is what we talked about yesterday. We talked about identifying the geometry portion of it so that we can then apply our algebra skills. So the geometry portion of this is identifying the nature of the relationship of the angles. So here, if we look, the angles, see that little box right there? That means that they are right. That's a right angle, which means that these two angles, B and 38, have to be complementary. Remember, complementary means that they add up to 90 degrees or sum to 90 degrees. So we know that B plus 38 equals 90. So that's the geometry portion of it. So now what we want to do is we want to go back and we want to use our algebra skills. Subtract 38 from both sides. And we get B 52. Like the plane or the band. Anyway, okay. So B equals 52 degrees. Number 3. So number 3 is identifying that set of angles and what their relationship is. So here we have B and 76. And see how they form a straight line? That means they're a linear pair, which means that they are supplementary. It means they add up to 180 degrees. So the 180 equals B plus 76. I just gave you all the answers. Subtract 76 from both sides, and we get 104 equals B. Okay? So, at this point, I would ask the sub, we've kind of gone over all the different types on this worksheet. So we're just going to set you loose. So just hit pause. Now, for some of the subs, it's going to be easier than others because some of the subs have math backgrounds. Others don't. I'm looking at you, Balo. And so if anyone gets stuck, I've actually gone ahead and worked through a bunch of the problems. So just fast forward, rewind, whatever you need to do in order to get to the problem that a student's having trouble with and just play that portion of it. Again, thank you so much for subbing for me. Kids, I hope you behaved, and I will see you guys as quickly as my doctor allows. Thank you guys very much. So number 4. B and 72, identify that relationship. So what helps me sometimes with these is when I see a problem, there are extra lines there. They're superfluous. They're there just to screw around with you. Like that one right there. We don't need that line. That line has absolutely nothing to do with the problem, so we can just take it out. We see that B and 72 form a straight line, linear pair, supplementary. So we go 180 equals B plus 72. Subtract 72 from both sides. And we get 108 equals B. 5, we got that bow tie angle going on. So we know that those are a vertical pair. Vertical pairs are congruent, which means that their angles are equal. Moving on. Number 6. So here again, this line right here has absolutely nothing to do with the problem. So what we're looking at is a linear pair. That means they're supplementary. So that means that 180 equals B plus 32. We subtract 32 from both sides, and we get B equals 148. Number 7, again, so we look at the relationship right there, and we realize that what we're talking about is this angle right here and this angle right here. Well, those form those bow tie angles that we know are kind of the hallmark of vertical angles. So, these lines right here have absolutely nothing to do. Notice I can take those out and the angles aren't affected at all. So it is a vertical pair. We know that vertical pairs are congruent. Therefore, B equals 85. Just like in problem number 2, in this one we have a right angle. So we know that right angle, that's our signal to use complementary. That means they add up to 90 degrees. So we know that 90, that's from the right angle, equals B plus 55. Subtract 55 from both sides, and we get 35 equals B. Sorry about all the meowing. We're currently fostering some cats. So, number 9. Again, we want to look at what the actual relationship here is. We want to look at the actual angles that are formed. We see that they're formed by opposite rays. That means that they are vertical angles. And since they're vertical angles, it means that they are congruent. And if they're congruent, it means their measures are the same, which means that B equals 76. Just like in number 8 before it, in number 10, we have a right angle, which means 90 degrees. So that right angle is broken up into 2 smaller angles, 51 and B. And we know that this is what we went over yesterday, the angle addition postulate. If we take one big angle, 90 degrees, and break it up into 2 smaller angles, 51 and B, that if we add 51 and B back together, we have to get 90. So that gives us our algebraic equation of 90 equals 51 plus B. Subtract 51 from both sides, and we get B equals 39. Number 11, we got a vertical pair here, not a vertical pair, a linear pair. They form a straight line. So we see that straight line, and that means supplementary, 180 degrees. We take that 180 degree angle, and we broke it into 2 pieces. That means when we add the 2 pieces back together, it's got to add right back up to 180. So 57 plus B. We subtract 57 from both sides using our prodigious algebra skills. We get 123 equals B. Number 12, 90 degrees. That right angle that signals that we need to use our complementary rule, that they add up to 90 degrees. What adds up to 90 degrees? 42 and B. So now I've got my algebra equation. Want to subtract 42 from both sides. And I subtracted 43 there. That's wrong. 42. That would make that 48 equals B. Number 13. So again, some of these numbers are some of these lines, like right here, are completely irrelevant. Those lines don't matter. What matters is that we have a right angle here, 90 degrees, broken into 2 parts. So we know those 2 parts have to add up to 90 degrees. So if 64 plus B equals 90, we subtract 64 from both sides, and so we get B equals 26. Some of these I'm able to do in my head that you may not be able to. Feel free to use a calculator or whatever you need. Don't rush it. Don't try and force doing it in your head. Precision is important. If you're going to put down an answer, make sure it's the right answer. Or at least the rightest answer you can give. So, and I don't mean like if you don't know what it means, don't put the answer down. I'm just saying that if you think that the answer is 90 minus 64, make sure that your answer reflects 90 minus 64. And so the next one, clearly we've got that B equals 90 right there. And then here, it's another linear pair, so they add up to 180 degrees. And we get b plus 122 equals 180. Subtract 122 from both sides. And we get 58 equals b. And that should do it. So hopefully that gets you guys through today. And if you have any questions on it, feel free to email me. I'm around all day. So if you need any help, I'm here. And I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for everything.